Last year I bought the Samsung Galaxy Tab S8, and this is my first Samsung tablet since the Galaxy Tab 4 back in 2014. I've been using iPads ever since, so it's been really interesting getting back up to speed with Android, and I really love this S8. I've been using it regularly for the past 18 months and it's been great. So I thought I would try the new Galaxy Tab S9, in particular this enormous 14.6-inch Ultra model. And I've only had it a few days, so I'm not ready to do an in-depth review yet, but I did just want to share my first impressions with you, which are extremely positive. This AMOLED 2X screen is glorious, colours are vibrant, brightness is excellent, even in direct light. And because it's AMOLED, there's superb contrast. It's got an adaptive refresh rate of between 60 and 120 Hz, which is an improvement over the previous panel, which was locked to 120 Hz. And I'm guessing that's going to help with battery life. New to the S9 series is that all three sizes of the tab get this lovely AMOLED display. On the S8, the 11-inch version got an LCD display, which is still lovely, but the AMOLED is a big improvement, so it's nice to have that on the 11-inch too. And I think this particular display compares very favourably with the mini LED display on the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. But the Samsung definitely has an advantage when it comes to watching movies, thanks to its 16:10 aspect ratio. And on this huge Ultra, watching movies is a joyous experience. And in general, this tablet doesn't feel quite as large as it is. Now obviously if you are upgrading from a mini tablet, then it's going to feel enormous, but you quickly get used to it. In landscape mode, it's perfect for multitasking a couple of apps side by side. You can have your notebook on one side whilst doing your research in a browser on the other. In portrait mode, the Ultra does feel a little bit too big for me, but I'm sure that plenty of users are going to absolutely love it. Now this huge screen of course is perfectly suited to Samsung's DeX mode. If you pair a keyboard and mouse or use a trackpad, you can basically have a PC-like experience. In fact, it actually works pretty well with the S Pen and the on-screen keyboard too. If you need to multitask, it's a really nice feature to have, and I personally prefer it to Apple's Stage Manager. But also, if you really do need that kind of power in your tablet, I'd also suggest checking out Microsoft's Surface Pro, which of course runs Windows. We all have our preferences, and the simple truth is that all of these tablets have got their pros and their cons. What works for me might not necessarily work for you, and vice versa. Now, you will notice on this display on the Ultra version there is a notch. The other sizes don't get that. Now, some won't like that at all, but I'm kind of used to the notch life thanks to the MacBook Pro, so it doesn't bother me, and I don't think it's that intrusive. Within this notch, there are two selfie cameras. There's a wide angle and an ultra wide, both with 12 megapixel sensors. And I do like the fact that they're positioned centrally when in landscape mode. One of my biggest peeves with the iPad Pro is that the camera is positioned over on the side for portrait mode. So if you're on a video call in landscape, it kind of looks like you're staring off to the side of the frame. And we don't get that problem here. Now on the subject of cameras, there's also a 13 megapixel wide and an 8 megapixel ultra wide on the back of the tablet. The 11-inch version just has the 13 megapixel wide. Now I haven't done any in-depth testing on the cameras yet, so all I can say is that they seem fine to me for tablet cameras so far, but I'll cover more of that when I do an in-depth review. Coming back to content consumption, I've got to say that I am very impressed with the speakers on this S9 Ultra. They're plenty loud and they have a nice bass response for such a thin tablet. And my first impression is that they compare very favourably with the larger iPad, so no complaints from me here. The beating heart of the tablet is the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Generation 2 Galaxy Edition, which has been clocked slightly faster than standard. I will do some benchmarking when I do my full review, but I think that is quite a subjective thing when it comes to tablets. I can tell you that this chip isn't going to match Apple's chips for raw performance, but since the iPad can't use all the performance on offer anyway, I think it's just better to evaluate whether the chip delivers a great experience, rather than worrying about benchmark numbers that don't necessarily translate to real-world use. And so far, I haven't seen any performance issues with this S9 Ultra. It's been buttery smooth for everything I've tried. Let's talk about S Pen. Now I have to say that S Pen is my personal preference when compared to Apple's Pencil or Microsoft's Surface Pen. That's because I mainly use the pen for taking notes and as a pointing device. And it has a lovely smooth feel on screen for writing notes, and I think the size is absolutely spot on. Artists might prefer the feel of Apple Pencil, so it is important to try them for yourself. But one thing that I like about S Pen is that you can use it without charging it. You only really need to charge it if you want to use the Air command gestures, and I've never found these particularly useful. On the S8 model, the pen had to be in a specific orientation if you wanted it to charge. That is, with the tip facing towards the camera lens. If you place it in the other direction, it doesn't charge, and the magnets just don't really attach properly. And speaking of the magnets, I always felt that those on the S8 weren't strong enough. It's very easy to dislodge the pen, especially if you're putting the tablet into a bag. Much the same story as with the iPads and Apple Pencil. I'm constantly knocking the pencil off the iPad. So I'm really pleased to see that Samsung has responded with the S9. The magnets are much stronger, and now you can attach the pen in either orientation. It attaches firmly and it charges in both directions. And something else that I've noticed is that the area where the pen sits is actually recessed slightly, and it has a matte finish. Now this doesn't mean that you can't knock the pen off. You still can, but it is better than it was. And it's probably as good as it reasonably could be, so thumbs up Samsung. I also think that the magnetic attachment for cases might be a bit stronger on the S9, but it might just be the case that I'm using, so I'll need to do a bit more testing on that. Something new to the S9 is IP68 rating for dust and water resistance, and that also applies to the S Pen, which incidentally is still included in the box. I think IP68 is nice to have, though I've got to say I'm not planning to sit in the bath with my tablet or anything. There's also Wi-Fi 6E as before, and now we have Bluetooth 5.3. Storage on the Ultra model is 256, 512 gig or a terabyte. And as before, you can expand this with microSD cards. RAM is 12 gigabytes on the 256 and 512 models and 16 gigabytes on the 1 terabyte model. You can choose your S9 in this nice graphite finish, or there's a beige color as well, and you have the option of Wi-Fi or 5G models. Samsung always seem to have great offers and trade-in deals which serve to sweeten the proposition. I was quite pleased to get a year of Disney Plus free with mine. I don't know that the S9 offers enough to make an upgrade from S8 worthwhile. I'm personally still going to be using my S8 because I like the 11-inch size for reading and meetings. I bought the S9 primarily for content consumption and doing research on that bigger screen, and I think it's a very nice tool for that. But what do you think about the new S9 range? Has Samsung done enough to convince you to buy one or to upgrade? Let me know in the comments, and thanks as always for your generous support. We'll see you again soon for some more geekery.